We have people. All right, well, good morning again, everyone, and good morning to those who are joining us online. Sorry that we're late starting. We've had some technical challenges, which I hope have resolved. So I'm Derek Johnson. I'm the head of the Department of Anthropology. I'm the director of the Dry Fish Matters project. I'm a sociocultural anthropologist, and it's my pleasure to invite two of my collaborators and friends. So the presenter is Dr. Sai Soe, but he is with his collaborator and partner, Dr. Waving Kai. So just to give you a little bit of background about their collaboration with me, I'm Wei Win's PhD supervisor. She's part of the Dry Fish Matters project. She was originally intending to do research on dry fish value chains in Myanmar, but because of the political challenges that Myanmar has faced over the last few years, we decided to redirect her research to Thailand. And so she's been working with Burmese migrants in Thailand, working in the dry fish sector in that country. But because of the political complications in Myanmar, it made sense for Sai also to join her in Thailand. It's just simply too dangerous for him to stay in Myanmar. So that has resulted in a really productive collaboration between the two of them, which has actually substantially enhanced Wei Win's work. So the presentation that you're going to hear from Dr. Sai is, in a sense, a bit of a blend of Wei Win's research and Sai's ongoing work, which links to his previous work. So Sai basically is a political analyst, long history of work in Myanmar, working on the sort of broader politics of the country. He has a PhD from the University of Sydney in disability studies, is it? Or disability policy and inclusion. So the broad area of Sai's work is disability, inclusion, and human rights. Okay, but because of this background in sort of analyzing the political complexities of Myanmar, he's been able to sort of weave in some interesting, sort of critically constructive relations with Myanmar migrant organizations, but also various opposition groups within Myanmar. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his complex relationship with those different groups. Okay, so I think that's probably good enough. I'll let Sai go ahead, and there'll be a substantial chance at the end for questions.
I think it's better for me to stand and, right? Otherwise, I will never stop talking. So we've got so many things to talk about. And first of all, thanks for having me, and thanks for coming to the session and listen to my experience. So I'm using that photo. It's quite popular in Thailand, especially you would find it in Phuket area, where most of the tourists, come, enjoy, and relax. So that's two ladies is quite prominent. The history of that two ladies dated back somewhere to late 1700, where they stood against the Burmese invasion and fought against all of those Burmese troops, and they were successful. So now that we are the Burmese living in Khao, which is quite close to the area, about 1 hour drive there. So now we are practically, pouring into the Thailand because of the situation. So you would see that the historical connection between the Thailand and Myanmar is very, very much long, way back, and we've been in a state. So this just to give you a brief of a historical background there. So it's a kind of a tribal kingdoms that we used to have, where we grow in one century and then we shrink in the next century. So we've been fighting, and there's a whole lot of history, a whole lot of descent if you call it, especially from the Thai side. And they even kept most of the remains that were destroyed by the Burmese or the Myanmar, like, or, few, or there are so many names and so many kingdoms. So this is one of the examples. This is in Ayutthaya, which is in the east of Thailand. It's used to be a very monumental temple and very, they have very much pride on what they have, but simply the Burmese, they just came in and then destroyed everything. So that's kind of a historical backdrop. And not long ago, we were in a similar sort of economic status, if you compare within the ASEAN country. So Myanmar used to be the colonial country of British, and we got independent in 1948. So soon after the independence, there's been some substantial growth in terms of economy and in terms of education, and also because of the British system that we have in the country, the university was quite vibrant in the early days after the independence. So most of the people from Asia, they just came to Burma just to study and just to be, engaged with the academia. So, and soon after, the whole political dynamics changed, especially from Myanmar. Burma turned into a one-party socialist system. They did a coup, and then they changed all of the education system, and especially, it's in terms of decolonization. But what they did is they did a very successful Burmanization within the country, because if you look at the country itself, we got so many diverse tribes or ethnic groups, but majority Burmese become the dominant power holder for many decades. So because of that situation, since from the early days of independence, there's been revolution. So people would refer to the Burma as the longest standing civil war torn country. Still up to this day, we have a civil war going on in many different areas. So with that context, this is the Thailand. So we share about 2,500 kilometers with Thailand. And also because of the situation, and if you look at, like I said, the economic situation or the status were almost the same up until the early 80s. And then the Thai become the tiger, Asian tiger, they become rich. And at the same time, the Burmese people, they having struggled with a whole lot of conflicts between ethnic minority, religious minority. There's been a whole lot of chaotic things happen during the past periods. And because of that difference, and at the same time, you would see the similar sort of cultural heritage, and also the way the political ideology manifests in both countries are pretty much similar. You could still see that Thai also had its fair share of political turmoil with coup like every 7 years. So they also had a coup d'etat back in 2004. Oh, so 2019, and then they did a election back in 2023. And one of the political group, the political party who won the election, never became the government. And that's how the political systems are. And they also have the similar setups with the parliamentarian system, where they have appointed military people, hold the seats within the parliamentarian setups. So it's kind of a similar situation. At the same time, the Thai also have concerns about their stability, the political stabilities, and also the social structure that they have built. And they have successfully built up a cultural society within the Thai community, where most of the Thai people, they would refer to them as Thai, not like us, not like Burmans or Shan or a Karen or a Kareni, to a different ethnic groups, but rather they would identify themselves as Thai. So the Thai monocultural propaganda and the campaign were pretty much successful with the Thai community. So in that settings, so when with the historical backgrounds and all of those political situation and the settings, Thai wants to remain stable and they don't want any pressure from international community. And they just want to be seen as the good country in Asia where people could come, invest, and relax. Most of the income that they were generated from the tourism and the hospitality industries. So they want to be seen in such a way. So they really want the needs of maintaining that sort of international identity, the Thai identity within the international community. And at the same time, their backdoor, which is Burma, is in a chaotic situation. So we've been fighting since 48, and we've been having so much trouble, especially with economic situation and ethnic minority, and even you would notice that there's been a genocide case against Myanmar Burmese government, and it's been filed by the Gambia in ICJ. It's still ongoing, and there's a UN process still ongoing with the IMM, they call it independent investigative mechanism for Myanmar, especially to look at and monitor the human rights violation situation within Myanmar, so that they could report, regularly to the Security Council in the UN system. So with that situation, Thai government is pretty much cautious how they would engage with the Burmese. So at the political level, they have a strong connection, military, the junta back in Burma, and also with the Thai government. They have a very strong collaboration. They did sign an MOU back in 2023 December, just to form a task force around the border so that they could deliver humanitarian aid efficiently in collaboration with both governments, and also to collaborate with different actors around the border areas. So that's what they say. But with the task force forming up and with the task force present in those areas, now we've seen so many people got arrested, especially who ran away from the chaotic situation in Burma into Thailand. We just had 27 arrested last week in a random raid to one of the safe houses that most of the Burmese shelter. So that's things happen occasionally. So you would see that at the top level, they have a very strong connection with the government to government bilateral sort of arrangement. They still have business ties. The PTTE, which is oil and gas company, the giants of Thailand, still invest a lot in Myanmar, especially after Chevron left because of the sanction. Most of the Western countries or the European investments have left the country. So that's where the PTTE, the Chinese and also the Thai investors substantially put more money and investment into Myanmar oil and gas industry and other industries. So this is the kind of Myanmar current situation. Like I said, we have many different ethnic groups, not because they are different, but because it's one of the remnants of the colonial system where division and divide and rule has been played for over a century. So that's how people differentiate themselves, and they don't want to be seen as similar or same, but rather they really tend to identify or differentiate themselves with the others. So we have so many diverse ethnic groups. And also, it happened that most of the mountainous area or the borders area, if you call it, where the northern Kachin, Shan, Kayar, and Kayen, and Chin area were mostly populated by Christian people. So that you would see that when during the time of colonial era, most of the Christian population were pretty much allied with the British uh, political system, and they've been given much of an autonomy compared to non-Christian people in the plain area. So there's been division and there's been dissent, and even a time where Myanmar walked for its independence in the early 40s. There are Christian groups who are pretty much in favor of having British and part of the Allied groups fighting against the Nazis or the fascists in the East. So at the same time, the Burmese who organized themselves as a revolutionists organized themselves and trained in Japan military, and bring all of those Japanese troops back into the Burma and started raiding ethnic people. So that's also the dissent and kind of a historical hatred has been there for a long time. And after the coup, so it's all reignite again. So because of the historical dissent and because of the long standing revolution, all those ethnic groups who has been fighting for their freedom, especially they really look for the freedom of autonomy or self-governing sort of system for a very, very long time. And they've been pushing for federalism and federal constitution for a very, very long time. So with 2021 coup, it's all been galvanized into one single revolutionary force. Even though there's been some territorial, acquisition between those different ethnic groups, but still they are galvanized to fight against the military once and for all. And military has been there since 1945, before we got independent from the British. So it's been institutionalized and it's become self-sustaining conglomerates within the country where they could have their own benefits in economic incomes, and they build institutions just to produce trained soldiers and trained experts in terms of medical, engineering, science, technology, everything within the military system. So with that, people are pretty much determined to fight against and get rid of the military once and for all within the Burma. So that's how it's shifted. So this is the last image. This is from the Special Advisor Council. It's used to be the one special rapporteur for the Burma, organized themselves as a group, and which has been monitoring for the Burmese political situation since after the coup. So they have a strong rapport. So these are the current situation right now, where you could see that most of the red area are the contested area, and especially with the military contact, they can only control so little space right now. But at the same time, because of the power imbalance in terms of military power, the military is still having, Air Force, Navy, and all of the infantry at its disposal. So they've been bombing in shape to many of those areas. So people have to run away. So this would be the example of IDP camps that we visited. So most of the people couldn't stay or remain in the cities where they have taken over because it's been bombed every day. So people have to flee into very remote area, build up their camps and live around those areas. And there's another photo there. This is the interesting one. So we saw that little guy, and he's about 7 or 8 years old. So what he's playing is he's got balls and other toys around him, but instead he is holding that stick, and he's been playing, mimicking like. So he in his memories and in his experience, he's only have that artillery share, and that's how he got into this place. So that's a kind of that would reflect the situation of children in the country. And that's also reflects the situation about the education system that we have because of the coup. And just before the coup, we had the COVID. So when the COVID came, most of them, people who have access to digital devices or any other technology, they can, continue the study on Zooms and everything that internet can offer. But for most of the children, especially in our country, we have only about 24% who could access to internet. The rest, no. So most of the around 78% of the people living in remote areas, especially in the rural area. So they are pretty much poor. So they couldn't afford any smart device like everyone. So because of COVID, the education has been disrupted. And now because of the coup, most of the people joining the civil disobedience movement, especially within the education sectors, most of the teachers, they just stopped working under the military regime and also from the health department. So most of the people, they just join into the chorus of civil disobedience. So because of the destruction, most of the children who were like 5, 6 years of age before the COVID now become at the age of 9, 10, still couldn't read or write. So that the situation is pretty much dire. And this is one of the examples it's been formed. So even when they are living in IDP camps, they are still prone or they are at risk of being heavy artilleries or aerial bombardments. So it's quite evident with many of the IDP camps where they still have to move around with the risk of being detected by the military and being targeted. So, and because of the situation and compounded to another problem that recently came up by the military junta is that the forced conscription law has been enacted starting from the 1st of April. So the law has been targeted toward 18 to 27 years for female and 18 to 35 for male. So that's practically in a bracket where most of the productive age are. So for most of the people who could afford or who could not afford to go out of the country or to come to Canada or any other countries, they would ended up whether to take up arms and fight against the military or just to go across the Thai border and become the illegal migrants in the country, in the town. So I'll come back to the part about illegal migrants and the refugees. So you would notice in the very first slides that the Thai hasn't become the state member of Refugee Convention, 1959 Refugee Convention. So because of that situation, and Thai, like I said, with their fragile political system, they don't want any chaotic movement within the country. So they just remain, they just wanted to be seen as a country hosting illegal migrants, not the refugee. So they don't want the refugee number growing. Most of the refugee camps that were built within Thai side of the border were dated back up to early 80s when the ethnic revolution got intense, especially with the Korean tribes. So with the refugee situation, they just really don't want the number to grow. The number has been fixed for many years already. 9 camps, 90,000 people. That's it. So the additional number or the influx that they have after the coup is identified, or they are identified as the illegal, undocumented migrants. So they are not the refugee, they are illegal migrants. In that regards, they play so many migrants policy towards Myanmar. So the migration policy in Thailand is pretty much strict and very complex, I would say. And the first thing you would notice is most of the instructions and most of the information are in Thai. So it's pretty much difficult if you don't understand Thai, or if you use Google Translate or anything else and it translated something wrong, then probably you would end up in detention center. So it's pretty much dangerous. So people have to rely on agents, so which would cost more. And even so, in order to get a visa from Canada, it would only cost me around $80 and additional $100 for biometric scannings. So $180, I could get a 5 years multiple entry visa from Canada. But for the Thai, you have to pay $80 just to get 3 months visa. And if you got 3 months visa, you can only stay 2 months, and then you have to extend for another month, paying $1,900, which is somewhere around another $300. So that would be 380, nearly 400, just to stay 3 months in Thailand. And in order to get a 1 year visa, it's getting much more complex. So you would need a whole lot of things and a whole lot of process. The first thing you would need is the employment agreement, where someone employ you, and you would have to make some income, and the employer has to make a certain recommendation and endorsement in order to have the employee get the visa. So it's pretty much complex. That's the reason why most of the Myanmar people are remain undocumented, and which are prone to get being arrested like every day. So most of the people who got there without any document would remain in a very small, tiny apartment, and they wouldn't even go out to have roam around within the community. So it's a very much isolated place. And like I said, education has been disrupted, and also because of the Thai system, even though they have education for all policy within the Thai, but the catch is anyone who access to the Thai education system must speak Thai language. So even though you would say that most of the migrants' children can go into the Thai education system, but they don't speak Thai. So that's kind of a challenge. So because of that, with the migrants community, and also one of the organizations that hosted us, especially in the Paula area, have been operating a migrants education program for 23 years already. So it's a small school in the beginning. It only caters somewhere around 250 children, but with the influx now they're growing to 800 children, and it's overwhelming for what they could serve. And they have a shortage of teachers, everything, shortage of everything. And the fact is that if you want to operate a school in Thai territorial or jurisdiction, then you would need to hire Thai teachers, because Myanmar or other citizens cannot become a teacher within the country, especially not Myanmar. So they have a very strict policy towards migrants, what they can do or they cannot do within the Thai system. They are not allowed to make monetary transaction. They are not allowed to be the responsible person for that sort of transaction. And you wouldn't see anyone taking orders from foreigners when you visit to some of those restaurants down south. So Myanmar are not allowed to engage with the tourists. And the HR department is solely for the Thai citizen. Financial department is solely for the Thai system. And also, it's also mostly the same with other countries as well. If you employ one Burmese, then you need another 3 Thai citizens to get employed if you are registered within the Thai system. So that's the situation with the FED, the school that we been attached to. So they are pretty much overwhelmed, and they are in a very tough situation within the Thai political and structural system. But at the same time, if you look at the background picture of it, what is written underneath. So it's a Songkran, which has happened last month, April. So it's a Thai New Year's kind of water festival party. And you could see most of the children enjoying, the seasons and the festivities. So what happened is you would see at the top or the political level, you would see very strong connection within the governments. And at the grassroots or the community level, you would see very strong connection within people to people, because they've been living there alongside the border for quite many years. So they knew each other and they understand each other. And you would also find sympathetic business owners or Thai, people in many of those areas. So that's how people got engaged and protected and found shelter within many different communities, especially around Chiang Mai, Mesa, so which are the most populated migrants, Myanmar migrants populated areas. So they are there. And down south in a place where we stay, we have only around 40 to 70,000. Like I said, the number is we cannot trace the exact numbers of migrants people. We can only assume certain numbers by some of the reports produced, especially from the organization like ILO, IOM, and other NGOs has been producing so many reports. So we can only reference to those numbers. We don't have the exact statistics of it, but most of the organizations assume that we have around 4 million, over 4 million Myanmar migrants living or residing inside the Thai area. So that's that kind of a population, and that's kind of the struggle. And at the same time, there are so many exploitation. You would notice back before 2010, there's been human rights abuse, especially in the fishery sectors, where slave trades have been become an issue, and it's been reported by many medias. And the one who reported the instance even got Pulitzer Prize and Pulitzer Awards. It's a Kachin lady. So there's been that thing has been going on, and ILO, IOM, and many UN agencies started looking on that issue. And what the Thai government did is they stopped accepting Myanmar migrants for a certain periods. But what happened is that most of the migrants have to, migrants being deported or repatriated back into Burma. But what happened to the local business is they suffer, because most of the local business have to rely on a Myanmar labor because they are cheap, and for the first day, And the second thing is because they don't have much of the opportunities or options to choose for, they would remain loyal once they recruited or they got employed, even though if it is underpaid. So most of the people are pretty much loyal. That's how the Thai business sees Myanmar migrants. And some of the business are also capitalize on such situation and build up the relationship with Myanmar people and they grew. So because of the Thai government decided not to accept the Myanmar migrants, most of the business sector, they have a very chaotic state. I'm sure you will remember that it was the time in 2008 where the economic, how do you call it? The
Asian financial crisis.
the Asian financial crisis happened. So after the Asian financial crisis, the Thai government tried to, rejuvenate the economic system and started looking at the migrants issue, and they stopped receiving the migrants, and the whole problem got bigger. So, and later on, Thai government decided to bring back those migrants in a much more collaborative manner, where they sign up with Myanmar government and for MOU, and they brought in for each industry. For example, for construction workers, fishery workers, rubber plantation, agricultural business. So they have a strict sort of provision for each sectors, and they start bringing in those migrants workers back into the country again. So this is just to show you. Doesn't change. Okay. So this is just to show you the example of the complex nature of documentation. The left one is a pink card, we call it. It's issued by the Thai government. The right one is the CI card, which is certificate of identity. So those are for the ones who don't have any identity card, especially for those who cannot apply passports or national ID or anything. So that one is issued by the Myanmar embassy or the Myanmar government office, which is mostly based around border areas in Thailand. So both of them is pretty much difficult to get, especially for the CI. CI, since it's issued by the Myanmar government, most of the time we have so many cases where non-Buddhist people are being targeted and excluded or even denied in extreme cases to issue a CI, especially targeted towards Rohingya. So the Rohingya has been excluded in Burmese politics and Burmese cultural system for many years already. So they've been targeted. So they won't issue the CI if someone looks like coming from those areas, especially if someone looks like a Rohingya or any Indian features. They would ask that person to recite some of the Buddhist scriptures or Buddhist texts. And if they could prove that they are Buddhist, then you would have them CI. If not, they would simply deny providing the CI. So once you get the CI, then you have to apply for the pink card, and which is another costly process. Mostly people have to spend somewhere around 12,000 baht, which is somewhere around 3 or 2,000. Sorry, my maths is not working. I'm going to take some coffee. So that's about $600. So Canadian $600. So you have to spend that amount in order to get a pink card. Once you get a pink card, you wouldn't need this kind of document. This is mine. So this is work permit. So they usually issue for a year. And it has a very, very strict restrictions, you would say. So right to engage in types of work. So I don't know what it says, but if someone picks you up and looks at your documents, and if they deem that you are not working to what it says, you can get arrested. And they have an employer name written there. So it has a specific employer endorsement. So that means if you are oppressed or if you have trouble in your workplace, you wouldn't have much of a chance to go out and move to another job. You need to change that. You need to renew the work of it. So that's how the policy have framed for those migrants, even for me. So that's a kind of a situation of Myanmar migrants there. So like I said, these are the current political issues there. The border task force has been formed, and it's mostly part of the campaign that they've been working on. If you would notice that there's been a case of online scamming business booming up around those border areas, especially around Thailand, Myanmar, and China, Myanmar, what I was saying here. China has been pushing to crack down those businesses for quite a while. And that's also the reason why the 1027 military campaign happened back in 2017, where three of the ethnic revolution group, kind of collaborated sort of strategic retaliation against the military and seizing many areas around border. So that's also the part of that thing. So because of that task force forming up around the border, initially the MOU and the agreement was saying that to look for or to strengthen the aid delivery around those border for assisting those IDP people and those people who have run away from the chaotic situation. But in reality, it was not the case. So the aid delivery or humanitarian assistance has not been efficient or reached to those dire areas yet, but rather what we are seeing is many arrests towards those younger generation who's run away from the full conscription law and all of those chaotic situations. So we got many reports saying that there's been a lot of arrests. And like I said, the oil and gas industry is still growing, so that's feeding the military operation. So the BTTE has been a good example. Another good example is that one of the vice prime minister. So I'm sure if you follow the news, you would notice that in parliament session, one of the parliament session, the revolution leaders, especially the NUG, we call it National Unity Government, which is a parallel sort of government formed by the revolution groups, were invited into Thai parliament to speak about the situation. So they were invited, and along with many other human rights activists and other civil societies leaders into the parliament. So that session was quite successful, and the international community were pretty much excited, whether the Thai could lead or to find some solution for the Myanmar situation. But during a week, that prime minister who invited or who initiated that session was sent from the cabinet, Thai cabinet. And it just happened that that vice prime minister is also the minister of foreign affairs for the Thai. So once he got set, he decided that he quit from his foreign minister role. So that guy is now off. So who is closely, who has a close relationship with many of the human rights activists and civil society community in the country. So that's a move forward party who have won the election in Thailand. So they are being, there's been a targeted approach towards Thai politicians who are sympathetic towards the revolution groups. That can be seen at the top level. So that's also happening right now. So the Thai politics itself is pretty much fragile because you would notice the yellow and red movement with the Thaksin being back into Thailand and now in becoming part of the power game again. So people are pretty much cautious that, like any uh, instigation or incitement towards any movement uh, would be strictly monitored and they would, control it with a much, rapid force. So that's the political situation. And these are children and the school which we are attached to is called Foundation of Education in Burma. So like I said, they could only cater for 250. Now they have over 760 last year, and now they are receiving so many more applicants. But the thing is, they cannot, accept more. So the problem there is the education is being disrupted, but somehow that sort of approach is pretty much common in many migrant communities. So we've seen migrant schools operated by some of the Christian ministry group, providing them with language skills, especially the ability of English language training, and also Bibles, hymns, and everything. So there are some schools like that, but they are pretty much limited to have access, even though they came in a sense of non-profit organization, but still, in order to sustain their operation, they need to take some registration fee. For instance, for FED, in last year, they would charge 500 baht for each children to go to school because the school and the areas where those people live in are quite far. So what they did is they have school buses picking them up and getting them home. So because of that services, they need some money in order to sustain the operation. But for 500, most of the parents, the migrants parents, especially for those who have like 2 or 3 kids, couldn't afford. So most of the children where we visited, especially for her research, were remain in their community, not having access to any education. They just stay there and sitting along their moms or their dads while they are walking. So the education system is pretty much dire, and we still need to work on that. And at the same time, because of a political situation and like the Thai political structures and the policy that they place upon migrants, especially Myanmar migrants, the unionization is not that popular, even though people have that sense. So the union, if you want to form a union, you need to be a Thai citizen in order to be a leader of the union. So Myanmar Migrants Union is almost impossible unless if there is some Thai citizen who have that passion and to lead up for the organization. So you wouldn't see that sort of union activities, but rather you would see some welfare groups coming up. It's for peer-to-peer sort of support system that they could build up. So that could be seen in many different communities, but without the unionization, but at the same time, there's been an oppression towards many migrants and labor. This is the kind of interesting case story that I found. So you would see that the boats, and that pier is owned by a Thai business owner, and also the boats, of course. And what happened is most of the Myanmar migrants and people who work for that business has been oppressed and sometimes even not paid for like 6 months or many long time. So they got that problem with the business owners and the migrants. And also because of the situation, Myanmar is not protected or the Burmese migrants are not protected because you cannot go straight to your embassy and ask for help or anything. The embassy is not working for the people. but for the military, so it's a different situation there. So because of that operation, one of, not one, some of the people who work for that business, what they did is they simply quit their job. And while they were quitting, they placed a kind of a spell towards the business. So they, in Burmese word, it's a curse. You know, they curse the business and they curse the business out. But what happened after that is because of that situation, most of the Burmese people are not dare to engage with the business because of the, you know, the rumors that has been spread around. And even that rumor has gotten bigger, and even Thai people wouldn't work for that business. What happened is that business got bankrupt, and the boats, most of the boats were, you know, sink onto the sea. And this is a photo which I took somewhere around February this year. So what the business owner is trying to do is he was trying to pump out the water and trying to bring up those boats back onto the shore so that he could restart his business. Even so, when he tried to pump out the water, the rain just pouring in, and it was unsuccessful. So that's where the most of the Burmese migrants see our cause is working. So that's kind of an interesting story where, you know, even though they are not allowed to be work in a unionization process or, you know, to be unionize themselves, but that sort of cultural practice somehow gave them the idea of boycott towards certain business owners. So that's kind of an interesting angle you would love to see. And these are the yeah. So these are some of the findings of Wei Wei, where she did an in-depth interview, anthropological study within different communities. So what we found is many of the migrant people are reluctant to identify themselves Myanmar. That's also, you would see that, you know, even the announcement for this session, it is written in Myanmar and also Burma and Burmese. It's quite confusing. So the Burmese or the Burma is where most of the British gave us. So it's coming from Brahmin, you would say it's coming from India dialects or Brahmin caste system. So we were called Brahmin regularly, and it became Burma during British era, and then we identify ourselves as Burmese. But with the ethnic conflicts, with the Burmanization process after the independence, so being identified as Burmese is pretty much different from being identified as other ethnic groups like Rohingya, Shah, or Korean. So that's also evident in some of those areas that we went to. Most of the people, they don't want to identify themselves as Myanmar, but rather they will say I'm Burmese or I'm Korean or I'm ethnic identities. So, and at the same time, people, so on the right side is a invitation of a wedding. So it's a local wedding, but still what they use in this invitation is they put an address on their Burmese home, not the town, even though the wedding itself is in town. So there's some belongingness issue there, where even though they are residing in Thailand, even though they are working in town, most of the people where we engaged were pretty much keen to go back to where they came from. So they somehow do not feel at home, even with the situation and everything. So they really want that belongingness, and also the homeland and the political engagement is also quite important because like I said, many of the people are working with very low paid wages and even lower than the minimum wages that uh, uh, enacted by the Thai government. So very low. At the same time, they have to renew their status with the documentations and everything, work permits and everything. They have that cost. And also, if they have children, they have to, provide some money or some amount of money for their children's education. So with that expense and everything, once they got the money, they still contribute to the revolution back into Burma. So they are somehow connected. Most of the people that we attached to came from the Nindai area, which is the southern part of Myanmar, and from those areas. And there's been a whole lot of fightings in many different militia groups residing in those areas. It just happened that they are all connected, they are all relatives and everything. So what happened is when they receive some aid income in Thailand, they have a regular sort of arrangement, like practically a monthly sort of arrangement to send back the money to those rebel groups so that they could keep on fighting. And once they really believe that they would win in June time, sooner, and they could go back home after that. So in the hope of that, they put a whole lot of investment in those revolutions. So they put, for instance, one of the family, they always pay like 1,500 baht a month back to the revolution. So they have that still issue. So some of the issue are pretty much drugs. So they have drugs issue. This is kind of an organic sort of juice where they drink. It's a leaf. I'm not sure how to call that a leaf, but it's a leaf. They just boil it up and then put some cough syrups and then some coffee or even with Coca-Cola or any Pepsi or anything, and then they just mix it up and then they just drink it. That boosts the power and that makes you not hungry. So most of the migrants live on their juice. So especially if you're working on a ship or a small boats in the fishery industry, they often have that juice because they only have 4 hours of the rest time. They have to work the whole day. So in order to get things moving, they just simply live on that. So that becomes kind of a problem, which leads to another addiction, especially with amphetamines or any other sort of drugs. So it's prevalent, and gambling is also prevalent, especially with 2 digits, 3 digits. They just place a bet on certain numbers, and it happens every day. So they spend most of the income, some of the incomes on the gambling. There are some issues and parts as well. And also because of the situation that built around those migrants population, the job stability is becoming like a problem where for instance, in Khao Lak, it's pretty much seasonal because it's a tourist area. So it only operates some from October up until the mid-May. So after 15th of May, most of the business closed down because the monsoon is coming and most of the tourists are, starting to dry down. And at the same time, you would see that some of the areas, especially around the Chiang Mai or Mae Sot, there's a forest fire during the summertime. The forest fire is getting intense and the smoke just cover the whole atmosphere. So most of the tourists wouldn't go there when that happens. So that was the time where most of the business are dried up. And that was the time where most of the migrants laborers were sad, and they have to find another avenue of income to keep them going. And because of the situation, and also because of the the children that they have are not going to school, so that they could not work for, especially for women, mother. So if they have children and the children are not in school, they cannot find other employment opportunities because they have to look after the children. So that's becoming like a vicious cycle. Because they don't have income, they cannot afford to send their children to school. And because the children are not going to school, they cannot work. So that cycles have happened. And what happened in such a situation is that most of the women go for to look for opportunity to exchange sex for money for sex. So that's how the prostitution becomes prominent in many of those communities. So that's also an issue. And the human rights, it's well reported that bondage. But the trouble is that with the recent study by the ILO, they did a survey and they did a policy advocacy for many different years to engage with the Thai government to put in place a regulation for the fishery industry because the fishery industry was not well regulated before 2010. So they did a whole lot of effort, advocacy effort to convince the Thai government to form a group which they call people. I'm not sure longer term that it's more like a group, a task force with different stakeholders in it, but the migrants are not part of the group formation, mostly by the Thai citizen or Thai officials. Only one, Myanmar or Burmese would be involved for the sake of translation. So that one person doesn't have anything or any say to any decision that will make other people. But somehow with that formation, with that progress, the UN or the ILO thinks that the work has been done. So they just stop their operation in terms of looking at the fishery industry by the end of 2023 on the December. They just simply say it stopped. And they are now conducting a survey in many different areas just to evaluate the whole progress. So with that situation and with the situation that I just mentioned previously, especially around the politics and all of those, social cultural problems that they have, the actual situation is not that finished yet, like the UN say, UN or the ILO are saying. We still see the dead bondage, like I mentioned, with my work permit. Most of the time, the people who work on a ship or a boat have to give their documents in the hands of business owners. That's create a kind of a vulnerability situation for those workers where they cannot complain or they cannot. And also because of the people and all of those progress that they made during the past decade, now the payment should be through a banking system. But the thing is, with the fishery workers or those laborers do not have access to the bank cards or the bank books because the bank cards and the bank books and all of them mobile application apps, it's pretty much inaccessible or they don't know how to access because of the language and because of the complexity of the systems. So they simply gave the bank cards and the bank book in the hands of a business owner. That also creates another vulnerability in terms of exploitation. So they don't know exactly how much they would be getting after the end of the month. So that creates much of a vulnerability. Yeah.
I'd like to make sure we have at least some time for questions.
Yeah.
And we only have 16 minutes left.
Yeah, perfect. So with that situation, there's been a whole lot of things going on. Even I didn't say I wasn't able to explain much about the IDP camp situation, but with the situation is dire there. With the FED that we are attached to now, we are providing education service with a mobile device. It's a kind of a very exciting moment for us. It's a mobile device. The device is about this size. It's built on Linux platform, which is free, open source, and it only costs about $100. And it can be powered by a solar panel. It's a small solar panel. You can put it in your backpack. And that device can be hooked up to a Wi-Fi router where it can be accessed through many different mobile devices, like Android devices. And Android is now becoming cheap. So what we are doing right now is with that device and with 20 tablets, a small one, a cheaper model from China. So 20 tablets and one device, we are taking it to the camps. And in that device, we can uplink to any internet access point or even use an SD card to upload the information that we want to train. And I'm sure that the university have an online platform like Blackboard or a Moodle system. It's the same thing we put in that device where people can, children can register themselves, access to what they have registered, and we can monitor their progress, and then we can do some online discussions and things like that. And it is offline. So that's kind of a test in a pilot phase. We are currently conducting in 20 different IDP camps. So that's the thing going on. At the same time, the one that needs to be mentioned is that you wouldn't find any children with disabilities in the migrant community. So it's quite obvious, and it is so strange because in our country with the statistics and evidence, we have about 12.8% of the total population having some sort of disabilities. But in the migrants community, there's no children. And when we got engaged and we built up the rapport with the community, when they gain trust towards us, when we openly discuss about everything, then they started explaining about the situation where they could not bring the children with disabilities inside the Thai country, or even someone who were born in the Thai having disabilities, they would send them back, or they would, give it away, or leave it in a hospital, because having children with disabilities and living a life in the Thai, especially dancing with fire in the limbo, is quite impossible for most of the migrants population. So that's how the problem is right now. And many of the time, they will not, even though they don't want to, but the situation wouldn't allow to. So that's where they are making so many sacrifices. So that's about it. Thank you very much for giving me attention. And
all right, well, we have about 12 minutes for a couple of questions. Anas. I think your hand was first, right? I think I saw something else in my peripheral vision.
I don't mind going.
Well, go ahead. I saw you first.
So thank you for the talk. It's quite insightful. There was so much in there. My question is about the legal status. So you said Thailand is not a signatory to the Refugee Convention, and I was just checking, it's also not a signatory to the Statelessness Convention. Have there been instances where you've encountered people who are stateless under international law, like not Myanmar refugees, but stateless? And is the process difficult for them to be documented? Because if you're a refugee, you do have some document from your home country to then become documented or regular. But if you're stateless, you really would have nothing. But there are instances of that.
Yes, but there's been so many incidents of that situation, especially in terms of defining stateless. You know, we have Rohingya population in Rakhine State, and which are at risk of being genocide by successive Myanmar governments. So what they usually do is they get on boat, move south, uh, in a hope of reaching to Malaysia. But Malaysia is a part of the refugee convention. But somehow they ended up in Thai because it's very far away. And, you know, if you cross along that route, that the weather is not in their favor. So mostly they ended up in Brazil. Even so, there are some reports where they ended up landed on the Malaysian shore. Once the Malaysian police found such people, they would simply sell them to the Thai police. Because Thai police, once they caught or once they capture a boat and people, they they got rewarded by the Thai government. So that's how they treat it. So in that sense, that there are so many cases of stateless people trying to get to the Malaysia mostly, but ended up in Thai side. But on the Thai side, it depends on which province that they ended up. There are some provinces where, especially, you know, from my experience, the province that we both are now residing in Thailand, especially around Phuket area, is pretty much hospitable towards such thing because the local governance is built from the community setting. So they have to elect within the community to become the leader of the community. And that leader, like, you know, a king, can stay forever, you know, in order to remain in that power. So they are pretty much in favor of engaging to the people within the community in that political system and setup. Some of the provincial governments are pretty much in favor of accepting those people. And also at the same time, not making a noise or any sort of providing instigating misconception about what they are doing towards the federal government. So that's how they are practicing. So that can be seen within many different communities where they engage directly to the community, asking specifically about what to do and what not to do, and when not to do for such a community, and they provide them with certain aid. So that's also the reason how some of those villages populated by many different ethnic groups from Myanmar can be seen in many different areas. So they were given a plot of land where they could, you know, utilize and live in, and they somehow, if the policy are in favor of providing them with some documents, they would follow up with that case. If there's no such thing as a policy or regulation, you know, to provide such thing, they simply would provide them with some recommendation signed by the head of police from the province. So many of those people have that, they call it a police recommendation or military intelligence recommendation, are quite evident. But the only thing is with that recommendation, it is only recognized within that provincial area. You know, you cannot reach to any district, any other provincial.
Other questions online?
Yeah, we have a question from Dr. Nancy Hansen from the University of Manitoba, who asks, does the UN Convention on the Rights of Disabled People improve the situation for disabled migrants?
Oh, that is an interesting question. So it just happened that Myanmar, Burma, and also the Thai are the signatory of the UN Convention. And from Myanmar side, it just gaining momentum towards providing disability services and inclusion in the country. They signed up the convention on the 2011, and they came up with law on 2015, and the bylaws in 2017, 18. So, and after that, they started building up strategies towards, providing services for people with disabilities. And that strategy has never been implemented, and the coup happened. So it's a down, back to square one for Myanmar side. And on the Thai side, Thai has been progressive in the sense of disability inclusion in ASEAN, except Singapore and Malaysia, of course, in which. So in terms of inclusion, and also because of the personal relationship that they have within Thai, royal family, there's a child who is autistic and has been killed in 2004 tsunami. So because of that relationship and because of the royal connection that they have, they are pretty much in favor of providing services to people with disabilities. They have a very strong setup with OBD, we call it Organization for People with Disabilities within Thai community. And they have a very strong setup for disability service as well. And they have a very strong insurance scheme or social service scheme for the Thai population as well. But the only thing is the migrants and the legality status of Myanmar nature. So most of the Myanmar with disability could not access to those Thai systems. So that's kind of a current situation. And probably that is also the angle that we are hoping to engage because it's non-political. At the same time, there's a dire need because of the conflicts, the armed conflicts that we have in the country. The number is growing and the landmine usage with the military is crazy. They just place landmine like them, spreading the seeds. So it's been everywhere. And many of the victims are children, women, because most of the time when they have to move around or makeshift shelters, the women are the ones who seek for fresh water and certain fruits and things like that. And they are the one who got that injuries because of a landmine incident. So the number is growing. So even now, as we speak, many of those who got injured and sustained disability because of conflict have to come across Thai side of the border, got them treated. If someone need to amputate for themselves amputate, so they have to go to the Thai side. It costs a lot of money. So sometimes in order to get access to that hospital and not amputate, that person at minimum would have to spend somewhere around 1,900,000 baht. So which is somewhere around 8,000 Canadian dollars. So it is expensive. And once they got amputated, the next follow-up is no more. No more rehabilitation, no more prosthetic. So in order to get a prosthetic, you need to go or you need to try to attach or get attention to some agency so that you could have access to prosthetic service. So it's difficult. The service is there, the policy framework is there. They are pretty much in favor of inclusivity and disability inclusion, and they are in pretty much favor of improving human rights situation for people with disabilities. But currently, that agenda is not linked to the migrants or the migration agenda yet. So we are hoping to get linked up.
So, right, one last quick question from Starter Time. All right, then. Good. Well, thanks everyone for coming, and thanks Sai for the very rich presentation and briefing. All right.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.